In ancient Greece, the loser of a battle wasn't determined by a body count or a flag of surrender. It was determined by a single question: may we please bury our dead? If you had to ask that question, you had lost, formally, publicly, and religiously. Greek battles followed a rigid script from the very first move, threatening someone's wheat field, to the very last act, hanging a dead man's helmet on a wooden stake. Every step had rules. This video walks through all of them. The sequence never varied: threaten the grain, choose flat ground, perform sacrifices, advance, collide, rout the enemy, erect a trophy, receive the burial request, 7 phases, 1 afternoon, and an entire war could be decided. The script began with wheat. Greece was a land of small city-states, each one called a polis, each dependent on its own grain harvest. An invading army didn't need to besiege walls. It marched straight for the enemy's cropland, arriving just before harvest when the grain stood tall and dry. The threat was existential: come out and fight, or watch your food supply burn to ash. Winter starvation would finish what swords never needed to start. The defender had no choice. Losing the harvest meant losing the city, not next year, this winter. Mothers, children, the elderly, all depended on that grain. So the defending army marched out through its gates, formed up on the plain, and accepted battle on the invaders' terms. This was the genius of the system. The invader never needed to breach a single wall. Hunger pulled the defender into the open. But you can't fight just anywhere. Herodotus observed that Greeks chose the best and smoothest place for battle. This wasn't chivalry or a cultural love of fair fights. A phalanx, a tight formation of shield-bearing infantry, cannot function on rough ground. Trees break the line, ditches create gaps, slopes tilt shields apart. Once the formation breaks, hoplites, citizen soldiers armed with heavy shield, spear, and helmet, become isolated fighters, and isolated fighters lose to a disciplined war every time. Both armies needed flat, open terrain. It was a tactical requirement dictated by the physics of the phalanx, not a sporting preference. Before the advance, both sides performed sacrifices. A goat or sheep was slaughtered. Priests read the entrails for divine omens. Then the men ate breakfast, for many, their last. The advance began on a flute. Hoplites marched in step, rhythm kept not by drums but by the all-leads, the flute player walking at the front. The army sang the paean, a battle hymn to Apollo. As they closed within range, enemy javelins and sling stones began to fly. The walk became a trot. 2 walls of bronze and wood, each 8 ranks deep, accelerated toward each other. In the final yards, men broke into a dead run and collided at full speed. But the collision was never head-on. Thucydides, in Book 5, identified a phenomenon every Greek army experienced: the rightward drift. Each hoplite carried his round shield, the aspis, on his left arm. His left side was protected, his right side was exposed. Instinctively, every man edged rightward, tucking behind his neighbor's shield. Multiply this across hundreds of soldiers, and both lines shifted right during the advance. The 2 phalanxes didn't meet face to face, they met at an angle. The strong right wing of each army overlapping the weak left wing of the other. The armies have collided. Now the real problems start for the commanders. Every general faced one impossible trade-off: frontage versus depth. Picture this: you command 9,600 hoplites against a larger force. Your enemy stretches 1,200 across and stands 8 deep. You can match his width, 1,200 men across, 8 deep. Your line holds the same front, but it's thin, and he has reserves you don't. Or you form up deeper, 800 across, 12 ranks deep. A 12-deep phalanx generates tremendous shoving power. It physically pushes through an 8-deep formation. But now your line is shorter than his. His extra men wrap around your exposed flanks and strike soldiers who are pinned facing forward, unable to turn. Imagine standing in the 8th row, pushing ahead when spears strike from your right, a direction your shield can never reach. Outflanking is fatal. Being pushed through is also fatal. If your army is smaller, there is no safe answer. This is the commander's dilemma, and it haunted every general from Marathon to Leuctra. Most people assume the head-on collision was where most soldiers died. It wasn't. During the clash, men wore armor from head to shin, bronze helmet, corselet greaves, and locked a 3-foot shield to the left arm. Packed shoulder to shoulder, there was barely room to strike effectively. The killing started when one side broke and ran. Fleeing men dropped their heavy shields to run faster. Their unarmored backs faced the pursuers. The data is stark. Winners lost roughly 5% of their force. Losers lost 15%. That asymmetry reveals the rout, not the clash, was the killing mechanism. 15% is devastating, comparable to the breaking point of many modern military units. The rout is over, the field is won, but the battle isn't decided, not until the rituals are complete. The victors drove a wooden stake into the ground at the exact spot where the enemy turned and fled. They hung captured enemy equipment on it, a bronze helmet at the top, a corselet across the crossbar, a shield propped at the base. This was the trophy, and the word itself reveals its meaning. It comes from the Greek trephel, meaning to turn. The trophy didn't mark where the victors triumphed, it marked where the enemy broke and ran. It wasn't a monument of glory, it was a marker of shame. The victors now controlled the entire field. They tended their wounded, collected their dead, buried them freely. No permission needed. The losers faced a different reality. Their dead lay on ground controlled by the enemy. Greek religion held a terrifying belief: an unburied soul wanders in eternal misery, unable to cross into the underworld. The stakes were absolute. So the defeated city sent a delegation, unarmed envoys who crossed the battlefield to ask one question: may we collect and bury our dead? Permission was always granted. The religious consequences of refusal were too severe for any Greek to risk, but the act of asking was itself the defeat. That moment, not the fighting, not the rout, was the formal, public, irrevocable acknowledgement of loss. This is what made Greek warfare an agon, a contest with unambiguous winners and losers. It was fought not for individual kleos, personal glory, but for the polis. Victory honored your city, defeat shamed it before gods and men. Greek hoplite warfare looks primitive, men shoving each other with shields on a flat field, but it was extraordinarily structured. Every phase, the provocation, the terrain, the advance, the collision, the rout, the trophy, the burial, followed shared cultural logic. It was brutal, but never random. A single afternoon could decide an entire war, and both sides knew the script before the first flute note sounded.